The Harlem Renaissance is where in Manhattan an area which covers 3 square miles drew nearly 175,000 African Americans. This great escape from the brutal South drew to Harlem some of the greatest minds and brightest talents. In remembrance of the Harlem Renaissance, the black chess masters united together to form the first international black chess tournament. This tournament was the brainchild of International Arbiter Jerry Bibuld and sponsored by Dr. Murphy Jones. The combatants were Stephen Muhammand, Michael Scherfer, Watu Kobisi, William Morrison, Kenny Solomon, Norman Rogers, Amos Somatowi, Ronald Simpson, Grace Nushabuta, and Ernest Coding. Stephen Muhammand won this prestigious tournament. Let's look at the game that he played against Eugene Perelshteyn at the World Open 2002. This is a beautiful game where Muhammad dismantled the King's Indian defense. Let's have a look. Muhammad started out with d4. Perelshteyn replied knight to f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, f3. Now, black played the King's Indian defense and white responded with the samish attack. Okay, the samish attack can be very tactical, but it's not played very much on high levels now because it have a major flaw. This knight is supposed to be on f3. Even though you have built up your center by starting this chain, and plus you got 3 pawns in the center, this knight right here will find it hard to find a square to travel to. He can go to e2, and then there are a lot of times where he go to c1, and then he might go to d3. But this knight is really just have a hard time getting into the game. There are a lot of times where that white will play the knight to e2, and then he will sack a pawn on e5, and then he'll play the knight to f4. That is one idea. Also, with the samish attack, white might want to push his kingside pawns with g4, h4, h5. Let's continue. Castle, bishop to g5. Now that's the second move, but bishop to e3 is the main variation. Okay, but Stephen played bishop to g5, h6, bishop to e3, and c5, d5, e6. Now, let's just take a look at black ideas. Black have a couple of ideas here. One of them is to capture on d5, okay, open up the e file and play knight to h7, and then followed by f5. Also, this knight can, of course, go to d7. And within that idea, black also have the a6 and b5 idea. So let's continue. G knight to e2, ex d5, cx d5, h5, knight c1, b knight to d7, bishop e2, a6, a4, knight to e5, double zero, knight to h7. Now, black wants to play f5 to attack white center. h3, h4. Okay, f5 is a course an idea. f5, f4, knight f7, and if ex, bishop x. And the game is probably equal at this point. Let's go back to the main. So h3, h4, f4, knight to d7, queen to d2, f5. Okay, now this f5 is a little different than black had more pieces into the game. This piece looked very passive, and of course this is passive. So I'm not sure about f5 this is a good idea to play it now. But I guess it's good. So he played, the computer says if ex f5, gx f5, bishop to f1, bishop to f2, and white have an advantage. Because this pawn is a liability, right? I can always play maybe queen back here, and I can put a lot of pressure on to this. So let's see in the game, he played f5. He played bishop to f3, rook to b8, getting ready to expand on the queen side. Knight 1 to e2, b5, ax b5, ax b5, and e5. Stefan is going for the win. This is a very controversial move because basically he is sacking a pawn. And what is his play? Let's see what he have in mind. dx, e5, fx e5, bishop x e5, and knight to e4. And now we see for the sacrifice pawn, Stefan would like to get his knight into this beautiful square on e6. Or if you take my knight and then I'll take your bishop and I'll have the two bishops advantage. Okay, I should have compensation for the pawn at that point. So knight to f4, and Perelshteyn played rook to f6, which is really the rook looks misplaced there. He should just play queen to f6, and the game is probably equal. But he played rook to f6. Knight to e6, attacking the lady. Queen to e7. Rook to a7. Bishop to d6. Rook to e1. And we can see that black is starting to get into some trouble in this position. This knight right here came from basically nowhere. It came from c1, e2, f4, and e6. This knight is passive. This knight is passive. This bishop is doing nothing. This bishop is very active. This bishop is defending the pawn, and in some variations, he can be rerouted to the a2 g8 diagonal. Or also, if black elects to push his pawn, there are some lines the bishop have the h5 available. So white is just better in this position. b4, knight to a4, bishop to b7, bishop to f2, uncovering this, and in addition, attacking h4. Knight to e5. Knight takes c5. Let's see if white have won his pawn back, and his pieces seem to be swarming all over black position. g5. That is a blunder. Knight takes b7. Rook takes b7. Rook check. Rook to b8. Rook takes b8. Bishop takes b8. Bishop to b1. Rook to g6. Bishop to b3. Aiming for the knight to d4, I would imagine. The knight want to come to d4. Maybe put pressure here. Threatening ideas like this. Threatening ideas like d6. Discover. Bishop to d6. Blockading the d pawn. Queen to c2. Queen to f6. That is a blunder. Check. Knight back. Bishop to d4, pinning. g4, trying to find play. Bishop x e5. Bishop x e5. Knight x f8. Queen check. King to f1. G takes h3. Knight to d7 check. King to h7. Knight takes b6. H takes g2 check. King to e2. h3. Queen takes f5. h2. Queen to f5. Rook to h6. And queen takes e5. And he resigned at this point. The game could go on something like this. You could play queen. Queen to e7 check. King to h8. Queen to f8 check. King to h7. And bishop to c2 is winning. Or we could play it like this. After rook to h6, we could play queen takes e5. Queen, I guess queen to e7 was going to win. Let me just go back to this position. And after queen to h5 check, rook to h6. Instead of queen takes e5, we could play queen to c7 check, king to h8, and rook to a1. And if knight check, king to d1, bishop to d8, bishop to c2, threatening checkmate in 1, bishop d6, rook to a8 check, bishop f8, and of course rook x on f8 is checkmate. What a great game by Stephen Muhammad. I hope you enjoy this video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, good luck, good chess. Cheers.